The young mother had intended to visit her parents for Christmas, but she never arrived. In the days leading up to the holiday, she ceased all communication and vanished without a trace. Concerned, her parents initiated a search for their daughter, uncovering unsettling and perplexing clues along the way. As the investigation progressed, detectives encountered an unforeseen twist that left everyone involved in the case astonished, as it was unlike anything they had previously experienced. Ultimately, this unexpected development propelled the investigation forward and aided in revealing the truth. Melissa Wolfenbarger was born on September 9, 1977, in the quaint town of Locust Grove, Georgia. As the youngest child in her family, she was cared for by her older sister, who was 7 years old at the time of Melissa's birth. The sisters developed a strong bond as they grew up together. During her high school years, Melissa met a young man named Christopher, and shortly after graduation, they married. The couple settled in a peaceful suburb of Atlanta, where Christopher found employment at a glass manufacturing facility. Not long after their move, Melissa became pregnant, and they welcomed a daughter, followed by a son a bit later. By 1998, at the age of 21, Melissa dedicated most of her time to raising her children. Despite her youth, she found joy in her expanding family. Melissa made an effort to visit her parents and sister whenever possible, but due to the distance and her numerous responsibilities, these visits were infrequent. They had planned to celebrate Christmas together that year, and a month prior, during Thanksgiving, Melissa reached out to her mother to request a special gift, an old photograph of her grandfather. Her mother diligently searched through family albums, found the perfect picture, and eagerly awaited the arrival of her daughter and grandchildren. However, when Christmas arrived, Melissa was nowhere to be found. Initially, her parents were taken aback, as they had been looking forward to this gathering for over a month, but they assumed she might simply be overwhelmed with her commitments. She had 2 young children to look after and had recently taken a job at a cafe, as Christopher's earnings were insufficient to support the entire family. The situation was further complicated by their inability to simply call Melissa to inquire about her absence. There was no phone in her home, and cell phones were not widely used at that time. Typically, Melissa would contact them from her in-laws' residence, but since her last call on Thanksgiving, there had been no communication. Her parents chose to wait, but when Melissa failed to call on her mother's birthday, their concern grew, prompting them to travel to Atlanta to check on her. To their astonishment, they discovered that Melissa and Christopher's home was entirely vacant. Conversations with the neighbors revealed that the family had moved out shortly after Christmas, yet no one knew their destination. This left her parents bewildered. They could not fathom that Melissa would relocate without informing them. Eventually, they managed to contact Christopher's parents, who facilitated a connection with him. However, the situation became even more perplexing. He asserted that Melissa had left him in December and had not been seen since. According to him, she had chosen to relocate to California to start anew, leaving him and their children behind. Her parents found it difficult to accept Christopher's account. They could not believe that Melissa would abandon her toddlers, aged 1 and 2. Moreover, if she had truly decided to move, they were certain she would have reached out or visited, but that never occurred. Despite their skepticism, Christopher remained steadfast in his narrative, and Melissa's parents were unable to extract any further information from him. They returned home uncertain of their next steps, but resolute in their determination to locate their daughter. In the ensuing months, they endeavored to trace her whereabouts, reaching out to friends and family. Yet it seemed as though Melissa had disappeared without a trace. In the spring of 1999, Melissa's mother came across a news segment detailing the discovery of a human head in a bleach-soaked bag by Atlanta police in a wooded area. Shortly thereafter, authorities uncovered 4 additional bags containing other body parts. What particularly alarmed her was the proximity of the site to Christopher's former workplace, leading her to fear that the remains might belong to her daughter. However, the police later clarified that the head was identified as belonging to a man from an unrelated cold case. By early 2000, Melissa's parents decided to engage the police, but their involvement yielded little progress. Investigators interviewed Christopher and concluded that Melissa had likely chosen to leave her family to start anew, which explained her lack of communication. Consequently, the police opted not to pursue the case further, but Melissa's parents remained unconvinced that she had simply abandoned her previous life. With each passing month, their belief that something sinister had occurred only intensified, and they began to suspect Christopher's involvement. They were aware of the couple's tumultuous relationship, marked by instances of physical abuse from Christopher towards Melissa, prompting her to leave him and seek refuge with her parents, taking the children with her. Yet, each time he would apologize and persuade her to return. This history made Christopher's current behavior all the more suspicious. If he had previously gone to great lengths to win her back, why was he now silent? He failed to contact her parents, did not approach the police, and made no attempts to prevent her departure. Another peculiar aspect was Christopher's claim that Melissa had left without taking any belongings. No clothing, jewelry, or even identification. This situation felt increasingly bizarre, and without police assistance, Melissa's parents felt utterly helpless. For several years, there were no leads regarding Melissa's whereabouts. However, in 2003, a significant development occurred when police reopened a cold case involving the murder of a woman from 1977, which had remained unsolved for 26 years. Following a thorough examination of the evidence and the results of a DNA test, detectives were able to identify the perpetrator as Carl Patton, the father of Melissa. However, this revelation was merely the beginning of a complex case. After his arrest, Carl proposed a deal to the authorities. He was willing to confess to 3 additional murders in exchange for complete immunity for his wife, who had assisted him in these crimes. In conjunction with this agreement, Melissa's mother consented to testify against her husband, ultimately receiving immunity herself. According to their statements in December 1977, a woman named Mary, who had a close relationship with Carl, offered him $155,000 to eliminate her husband due to his infidelity. Additionally, Mary had taken out a life insurance policy on him and sought to benefit financially from his death. Carl accepted the offer and enlisted a friend to help execute the murder. However, when they approached the target, they found his lover present, leading them to decide to kill her as well. They disposed of the woman's body in a river and left the man's body in his car on train tracks, attempting to stage it as an accident. A month later, Carl informed his wife that his accomplice had allegedly revealed details of the crime to his girlfriend, prompting him to express a desire to handle them too. He invited the couple to his residence where he murdered them and, with his wife's assistance, disposed of their bodies in a river. She also aided in cleaning the crime scene and the van used for transporting the remains. Subsequently, Carl admitted to a 5th murder that occurred 5 years prior, again involving Mary, who had offered him money to kill her first husband, a request he accepted. Consequently, Carl faced charges for 5 murders, and the police began to suspect his involvement in Melissa's disappearance. Nevertheless, Carl maintained that he would never harm his daughter and had no connection to her case. Further investigations led detectives to believe that Carl was likely truthful, as they had initially suspected him of only 1 murder, but he had voluntarily confessed to 4 additional ones. Carl expressed profound remorse for his actions, which ultimately compelled him to come forward with a confession. However, he had additional motives. Taking advantage of the situation, Carl requested a meeting with the lead detective who had linked him to the murders, stating, "You were able to apprehend me, so perhaps you could assist in finding my daughter." The detective found the scenario quite compelling. A man responsible for 5 murders was now seeking help to locate his missing daughter. This unusual request piqued the detective's interest, and he agreed to investigate further. He began to examine the scant details surrounding Melissa's disappearance and quickly identified a significant piece of information: the bags of human remains discovered near Christopher's workplace 4 years prior. Initially, the police had presumed the remains belonged to a male, but the detective realized this conclusion was merely speculative, as it was based on the advanced decomposition of the remains. He opted to have them reanalyzed and requested a DNA test, having Carl's DNA readily available. The findings confirmed his suspicions. The remains were not those of a man, but belonged to Melissa. This revelation led the police to conclude that Melissa had been deceased for several years, prompting a reclassification of her case as a homicide. The medical examiner's report indicated that the victim had been dismembered with a reciprocating electric saw, and notably, Melissa's torso remained missing. Despite extensive searches in the wooded area where the other remains were found, it was never located. Nevertheless, investigators uncovered a promising lead. They delved deeper into Christopher's background and interviewed his previous employer at the glass factory, where he had worked until Melissa's disappearance. It was revealed that Christopher had been terminated around the same time for allegedly stealing an electric saw, the very type used in the dismemberment of Melissa's body. Melissa's mother informed the police that Christopher had a history of physically abusing her daughter and also had a criminal record. Additionally, it was noted that Christopher changed his name shortly after Melissa's death without any apparent justification. This series of events positioned him as the primary suspect in her murder, although the police lacked concrete evidence against him. They conducted multiple interviews with Christopher, who maintained his initial narrative, albeit with frequent alterations to specific details. In one instance, he suggested that Melissa had a romantic partner and had eloped with him. In another, he claimed she was involved in selling counterfeit IDs, which he argued explained her lack of communication. The investigation revealed another noteworthy aspect. After relocating, Christopher left his children in the care of his parents and played a minimal role in their upbringing. Although he visited occasionally, the children were largely unaware of his identity as their father. Unfortunately, these revelations did not bring the investigators any closer to making an arrest, as they still required substantial evidence. They secured a warrant to search the residence where Melissa had lived at the time of her death, suspecting that the murder, which involved an electric saw, likely occurred there. Detectives hoped to uncover blood evidence or other crucial materials. Forensic experts conducted a thorough examination of the premises, collecting samples from various surfaces. Regrettably, their findings were inconclusive. The forensic technology available at that time was not as advanced as it is today, leading detectives to store the collected evidence in hopes that it might be useful in the future. Despite several additional attempts to generate new leads and encourage Christopher to divulge more information, these efforts proved fruitless, and the case ultimately went cold for many years. Melissa's father was convicted and received a sentence of 5 life terms, along with an additional 20 years in prison. It is important to mention that Mary, the individual who had financially supported him in 2 of the murders, had died in the late 1980s, thus avoiding any repercussions for her involvement. Meanwhile, Melissa's mother and older sister persisted in their efforts to advance the investigation independently. They aimed to keep the case in the public eye and maintained regular communication with the detectives, yet their endeavors did not lead to any significant developments. This situation persisted until 2017, with Melissa's mother remaining hopeful for justice for her daughter. That year, she chose to participate in an event where true crime enthusiasts gathered to discuss cold cases and explore potential new leads. Among the attendees was crime analyst Cheryl McCollum, to whom Melissa's mother turned for assistance. She recounted her daughter's disappearance and revealed a startling detail. "My husband committed 5 murders, and I helped him." This revelation piqued Cheryl's interest, prompting her to investigate the case more deeply after the event. She engaged with Melissa's family and maintained communication with her father, who was incarcerated. Cheryl was particularly struck by the fact that a man responsible for 5 murders appeared more troubled by the possibility that his daughter's case would remain unresolved. In the following years, Cheryl amassed all pertinent information regarding the case and concluded that the primary suspect was Melissa's husband, Christopher. While there was no direct evidence implicating him, the substantial circumstantial evidence left little room for doubt. He had a documented history of domestic violence against Melissa, showed no initiative in searching for her after her disappearance, and seemed to carry on with his life as if nothing had occurred. The most damning piece of evidence was that shortly before Melissa's tragic death, Christopher had been accused by his employer of stealing the very type of saw that was used to dismember her remains. Melissa's family, including her children, had no doubts about Christopher's culpability. By the time Cheryl took an interest in the case, Melissa's children had matured and were eager to assist her in uncovering the truth. Cheryl sought the expertise of notable figures in the true crime field, such as journalist Nancy Grace and various law enforcement officials. After thoroughly examining the evidence she had compiled, they all concurred that Christopher was the prime suspect. However, the absence of irrefutable evidence meant the case remained unresolved. At this juncture, Nancy Grace recommended that Cheryl create her own podcast to garner more attention for the case. Public interest can often play a pivotal role in unsolved investigations, potentially bringing forth new witnesses who may not fully grasp the importance of their information, thereby altering the investigation's trajectory. Ultimately, Cheryl decided to proceed with the podcast, launching the first episode focused on Melissa's case in 2023. Since then, she has produced numerous episodes featuring interviews with the victim's mother and other family members. Despite presenting all the information she had accumulated over the years, the case showed no signs of advancement. This situation persisted until April 2024, when a significant development finally occurred. Following the release of another episode, a witness contacted Cheryl, indicating that he had come across the podcast and possessed potentially crucial information. He recounted having witnessed a heated argument between Melissa and Christopher just before her disappearance. The specifics of his testimony remain undisclosed, as it occurred only a few months prior, and detectives opted to keep this information confidential to protect the integrity of the investigation. Some reports indicate that during a heated argument, Christopher purportedly made threats against Melissa. Cheryl relayed this account to the authorities, which served as a pivotal moment, leading investigators to revisit the case. In the following 3 months, law enforcement meticulously examined the case files, conducted interviews with all parties involved, and utilized advanced technology to scrutinize the evidence. Specialists analyzed the bags containing the remains and various samples collected from the residence of Christopher and Melissa, where the alleged murder occurred. In August 2024, investigators convened a press conference to announce the arrest of Melissa's husband, 25 years after her tragic death. While witness testimonies were shared, police opted not to reveal specific details regarding the evidence uncovered during the renewed investigation. Some reports suggest that contemporary analytical methods may have detected DNA or other significant evidence linking Christopher to the crime. The decision to withhold information is a common practice. The more details disclosed prior to the trial, the higher the likelihood that the defense could exploit them to undermine the evidence. Currently, Christopher remains in custody awaiting trial, with a preliminary hearing yet to be scheduled, during which he will enter a plea of either guilty or not guilty. Melissa's family harbors little doubt about his potential to evade justice, a sentiment echoed by investigators. It appears they have indeed gathered compelling evidence that will be challenging to refute. The case is nearing its resolution, albeit after nearly 26 years. Melissa's story has resonated nationwide, given the remarkable nature of the details involved. Initially, authorities were only able to confirm the victim's death after her father was apprehended for 5 murders and sought assistance from investigators. The podcast significantly contributed to drawing in the witness whose testimony was instrumental in reopening the investigation, which ultimately resulted in Christopher's arrest. Regarding Melissa's children, they share a belief in their father's guilt and are hopeful for a swift resolution in the pursuit of justice. In addition to awaiting a guilty verdict, they seek to uncover the complete truth and understand Christopher's motives. However, this can only be achieved if he chooses to confess. In the serene township of North Whitehall, Pennsylvania, a harrowing act of violence disrupted the tranquility over 30 years ago. The beloved 78-year-old widow, Rose Schnath, was discovered brutally stabbed and beaten within the confines of her ransacked home. This chilling revelation, unearthed by her concerned nephew when she failed to attend church, left both investigators and her family in a state of turmoil, grappling with a multitude of unanswered questions. However, with the advent of revolutionary DNA technology, this cold case has recently been illuminated, culminating in an arrest. Born in the early 1900s in the picturesque Lehigh Valley, Rose was raised in a humble household where the principles of hard work, faith, and community were instilled in her from a young age. She navigated her formative years during a period of significant upheaval in America, witnessing the trials of the Great Depression and the tumult of World War II, experiences that forged her resilience and determination. In the late 1930s, Rose met her future husband, Michael Hanath. The couple wed and established their home in North Whitehall Township, where they crafted a life filled with love and companionship. Michael engaged in various local industries, while Rose found her calling at the D&D Shirt Factory, a prominent establishment that provided stable employment for many in the area. Rose devoted several decades to the factory, earning a reputation for her unwavering work ethic and warm disposition. Although they did not have children of their own, Rose and Michael maintained a profound connection with their extended family. She relished her role as an aunt and great-aunt, often cherishing moments spent with the younger generations. A devout Catholic, Rose was an integral part of St. John the Baptist Church in Northampton, attending Mass regularly and engaging in numerous church activities. Her faith served as a cornerstone of her existence, imbuing her life with purpose and a sense of belonging. Known for her generosity, Rose frequently volunteered for church events and extended her helping hand to those in need. Even after retiring from the D&D Shirt Factory, Rose continued to embrace a life rich in fulfillment and community engagement. Rose found joy in the art of gardening, the pleasures of cooking, and the warmth of companionship with her friends and family. Her residence, gracefully situated along the serene banks of the Lehigh River, served as a tranquil sanctuary. Though her life appeared to be one of quietude, Rose remained ever watchful and engaged. The walls of her home were adorned with treasured memories and tokens from her life shared with Michael, who had departed this world a few years prior to the tragic end of her own life in a manner that was both unimaginable and horrific. On January 21st, 1989, the day unfolded like any other for Rose. In spite of a recent burglary that had unsettled her home just after the festive season, she adhered to her daily rituals, drawing strength from her faith and the love of her family. That morning, however, Rose was conspicuously absent from St. John the Baptist Church, where she was known for her steadfast devotion. Her absence did not go unnoticed, prompting her family to express their concern for her well-being. Her nephew, a vigilant guardian of sorts, ventured to her home to ensure her safety. Upon entering, he was met with a scene of horror that would haunt him forever. The once orderly living room lay in chaos, a clear indication of a violent struggle. Bloodstains marred the surfaces, and the room had been thoroughly ransacked. It was evident that Rose had fought fiercely against her assailant. Tragically, she was discovered lifeless, having endured a brutal and savage attack. The evidence revealed that she had been stabbed 28 times and bludgeoned, with multiple blunt force injuries marking her body. Defensive wounds indicated her desperate attempt to repel her attacker with every ounce of her strength. A knife, one of the instruments of this heinous act, was found discarded outside, suggesting the perpetrator had fled in haste. As the news of Rose's untimely and tragic passing reverberated through the community, a profound sense of grief enveloped her friends, neighbors, and fellow church members, all of whom were left reeling from the senseless violence that had taken away a cherished soul from their midst. The response from the Pennsylvania State Police and the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office was prompt and decisive. Detectives, including the esteemed Robert and Thomas McAndrew, swiftly arrived at the scene of the crime to commence their investigation. The sheer brutality of the act left even the most seasoned investigators in shock as they grasped the gravity of the situation. Within the confines of Rose's residence, detectives diligently gathered evidence, fervently searching for any hint that could unveil the identity of the perpetrator. The disarray of the home hinted at a burglary, yet the extreme violence suggested a more profound motive at play. Every piece of physical evidence that could potentially illuminate the circumstances surrounding Rose's tragic end was meticulously collected. Noteworthy items included a knife discovered outside, a pellet gun believed to have been wielded during the assault, and various objects within the home that might harbor the unknown assailant's DNA. Although DNA technology was still in its nascent stages, the investigators prudently preserved all possible evidence, anticipating that future advancements could reveal crucial insights. Blood samples, fibers, and other trace materials were catalogued with care, awaiting further examination. The detectives engaged in thorough interviews with Rose's family, friends, and neighbors, delving into her daily life, any recent shifts in her circumstances, and potential conflicts or threats she may have encountered. The burglary that occurred shortly after Christmas became a focal point of interest, prompting detectives to explore any possible links between that incident and her violent fate. Initially, a variety of theories surfaced. The prior burglary indicated that Rose's home might have been deliberately targeted, perhaps by someone acquainted with her or her routine. The extreme violence suggested the possibility of a personal vendetta or a crime driven by passion. However, without solid evidence or witnesses, these theories remained in the realm of speculation. Rose's funeral was a poignant occasion marked by profound sorrow and disbelief among those who had cherished her. The open casket revealed the haunting visage she bore in her final moments, a sight so heart-wrenching that some family members found it unbearable and chose to stay away. The investigation encountered numerous obstacles. Despite pursuing various leads and interrogating persons of interest, no conclusive links emerged. As time passed, the case began to stagnate, with the absence of fresh leads and the inability to tie the evidence to a specific suspect, causing the inquiry to falter. Nevertheless, the commitment of investigators to unravel the mystery surrounding Rose's tragic demise remained steadfast. After 33 long years, their perseverance would finally yield results. In 2018, the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office, in conjunction with the Pennsylvania State Police, opted to revisit the evidence from Rose Hanath's case, employing advanced DNA techniques. Detectives worked alongside forensic specialists to scrutinize the evidence, particularly focusing on items that could harbor touch DNA. This innovative analysis enabled forensic scientists to extract genetic material from surfaces that had been in contact with the perpetrator. The knife and pellet gun discovered near Rose's residence, along with other crime scene artifacts, were meticulously re-evaluated using this cutting-edge technology. Scientists successfully obtained DNA profiles from the gathered evidence, which were then matched against databases of known offenders. A significant breakthrough occurred when a DNA profile from the crime scene was linked to Michael Breisch, a name previously unassociated with the case. At the time of Rose Hnath's tragic murder, Braish was residing in a community correction facility in Allentown, Pennsylvania, not far from North Whitehall Township. He was 30 years old during the crime and had a criminal record that included burglary and various other offenses. Investigators began to reconstruct Braish's movements and activities around the time of the incident. In a striking turn of events, it was uncovered that merely 10 days following the tragic demise of Rose Hnath, Michael Braish found himself in custody for fleeing the community correction facility designated for his residence. This revelation, coupled with compelling DNA evidence, forged a significant connection to the heinous crime. Notably, it emerged that Braish had no discernible personal ties to Rose, suggesting that the assault was likely a crime of opportunity rather than a premeditated act. By May 2024, armed with this newfound evidence, authorities tracked down the 65-year-old Braish in the serene surroundings of Coshocton County, Ohio, where he had relocated after a lengthy stay in Pennsylvania. In a coordinated effort with local law enforcement and Pennsylvania officials, Braish was apprehended and subsequently charged with the murder of Rose Hnath. He was extradited to Pennsylvania, facing a litany of charges, including criminal homicide, burglary, robbery, and various related offenses. Currently, he remains incarcerated without bail at the Lehigh County Jail. The arrest of Michael Braish has ushered in a wave of relief and closure for the family of Rose Hnath and the community of North Whitehall Township. For over 30 years, they endured the torment of uncertainty surrounding the circumstances of Rose's untimely death. The relentless dedication of investigators, paired with the advancements in DNA technology, has finally illuminated the path to the answers they so desperately sought. As Braish awaits his trial, the family inches closer to the justice they have long pursued.
8-year-old Jennifer Schuett suffered a horrific ordeal, being kidnapped, assaulted, and left for dead. Miraculously, she survived despite sustaining severe injuries that rendered her speechless, but her memory remained intact. Years later, Jennifer would play a pivotal role in solving her own case, bringing an end to her attacker's notorious reign of terror. In the quaint town of Dickinson, Texas, Jennifer lived with her single mother, Ellen, in a modest apartment situated in a troubled neighborhood. On August 9, 1990, at 2:30 a.m., Ellen made an unusual request for Jennifer to retire to her own room, as she needed an early start the next morning. Jennifer complied, reading until she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Ellen's frantic search for Jennifer yielded a chilling discovery. Her bedroom window was wide open and her daughter was nowhere to be found. It became apparent to responding officers that Jennifer's disappearance was no ordinary runaway case. The investigation began immediately, with authorities launching a thorough search. Later that day, at 6:30 p.m., local authorities received a distressing call from parents whose children had stumbled upon a lifeless body in a nearby field. The gruesome discovery revealed the badly injured body of a young girl, later identified as Jennifer Schuett. Time was of the essence as emergency responders rushed Jennifer to the hospital, her survival hanging precariously in the balance. Her severe injuries included a throat slit from ear to ear, suggesting a possible sexual assault. The brutality of the attack was so extreme that hospital staff barred Jennifer's mother from entering her room, shielding her from the traumatic sight. Miraculously, Jennifer's attacker had missed the major arteries in her neck, sparing her life. News of the heinous crime sent shockwaves through Dickinson, Texas, leaving the small community reeling. Jennifer's mother was beside herself with worry. When Jennifer regained consciousness post-surgery, her behavior underwent a dramatic shift. The Dickinson Police Department assigned a team to guard her hospital room, but the constant presence of male doctors and staff triggered intense panic in Jennifer, plunging her into a state of persistent distress. In Jennifer's eyes, everyone was a potential suspect. Notably, she exhibited an unusual wariness towards police officers, a detail that would later gain significance as her story unfolded. Initially unable to communicate verbally with investigators, Jennifer relied on writing to convey her experiences. With notebook and pen in hand, she began sharing crucial information, primarily through notes passed to her mother, who then relayed them to the officers outside. Despite being only 8 years old, Jennifer demonstrated remarkable intelligence and attention to detail. Her written accounts provided vivid insights into the traumatic events. According to Jennifer's written testimony, she fell asleep in her bedroom, but awoke in the arms of an unfamiliar person. The stranger reassured her, falsely claiming to be a police officer and urging her to remain calm. He then transported her in a car, holding her on his lap. It was at this point that Jennifer's instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. Jennifer's understanding of the police as the good guys clashed with the stranger danger warnings she had learned, creating a deep-seated distrust, especially towards male authorities. To alleviate her fears, the assailant pulled into the local elementary school parking lot, assuring her they would wait for her mother to arrive at sunrise. However, his actions, smoking, drinking, and offering candies, raised stark red flags, eerily mirroring the warning signs taught in child safety programs. As doubts crept in, the man's ominous words echoed, "Well, your mum's not coming." He restarted the car, driving Jennifer outside town to a secluded field. There, her questions were met with silence. Upon regaining consciousness, Jennifer found herself being dragged naked by her ankle through the field. Demonstrating remarkable instincts, she pretended to be dead, recognizing it as her sole chance for survival. The ruse worked. Her attacker dropped her legs and walked away, leaving her for dead on an anthill. Jennifer's capacity for quick thinking and resilience in the face of unimaginable horror is staggering, considering her tender age. As sunrise approached, Jennifer heard the reassuring sounds of children playing and dogs barking nearby. She tried to scream but couldn't. Instead, she summoned the strength to cover her neck with her right hand, only to see it drenched in blood. Drifting in and out of consciousness, Jennifer's resolve remained unwavering. Fire ants biting her kept her awake, and she clung to the details of her ordeal, determined to bring her attacker to justice if she survived. Remarkably, Jennifer had extracted crucial information from her captor during their car ride, including his name, Dennis. A sketch artist was brought in to translate her memories into a usable police lead. Despite her inability to speak, Jennifer conveyed her descriptions through notes. With her guidance, a composite sketch was created, but unfortunately, it didn't yield immediate results. The police's public appeal and search only turned up scattered clothing from Jennifer and her attacker in the field. Frustrated and angry, Jennifer struggled to express her discontent, her silence exacerbating her emotions. It was then that a remarkable breakthrough occurred. During one of Jennifer's frustrated, silent outbursts, a faint sound unexpectedly escaped her lips. Medical professionals were astonished as her severely damaged vocal cords, nearly severed in two, were deemed irreparable. Defying expectations, her vocal cords began to heal, and Jennifer regained her voice while still hospitalized. Following her miraculous recovery, Jennifer returned home and bravely resumed her education the next year. However, re-entering the world after such a traumatic experience proved daunting. The entire town of Dickinson remained on edge, sharing Jennifer's trauma as the community grappled with the unknown identity of her attacker. In response to the heightened anxiety, local law enforcement bolstered their presence, deploying additional officers to schoolyards and classrooms. Despite initial urgency, leads gradually grew cold, and Jennifer's case languished for 18 long years without significant progress. Then, a phone call brought renewed hope. Detective Tim Cromie would be re-examining her case and requested a meeting. This development marked the beginning of a fresh investigation, rekindling Jennifer's pursuit of justice. The meeting with Detective Tim Cromie marked a turning point for Jennifer. His unwavering commitment, "I'll do everything in my power until the end of my career to get you the answers you need," instilled hope and transformed her outlook. Detective Cromie enlisted the Federal Bureau of Investigation's expertise, revisiting evidence from 18 years prior, including clothing found in the field. Time, though frustrating, had brought advancements in DNA technology. A year-long process unfolded, but ultimately proved fruitful. At 2:30 a.m., the DNA lab called, revealing a breakthrough. The Federal Bureau of Investigation had matched a name to the DNA evidence, Dennis Earl Bradford. This revelation corroborated Jennifer's childhood notes, astonishingly accurate despite her age, pain medication, and speechlessness at the time. Her insistence that her attacker's name was Dennis had been dismissed as a fragile lead. Now, it stood as a testament to her resilience. Investigations revealed 39-year-old Dennis Earl Bradford from Arkansas had been released from prison merely 6 months after Jennifer's abduction, having served time for another kidnapping. This chilling connection underscored the gravity of Jennifer's case and the significance of Detective Cromie's tireless efforts. Dennis Earl Bradford's downfall began with his attempted sexual assault on another woman in a bar, 7 years after Jennifer's abduction. This incident eerily mirrored his earlier crime, with choking and knife threats. His DNA, collected from this subsequent assault, was entered into the national database, ultimately matching evidence from Jennifer's case. Further investigation uncovered his 1990 driver's license, providing conclusive proof. Armed with this evidence, authorities secured a warrant and apprehended Dennis. At the press conference announcing Dennis's capture, Jennifer publicly expressed her gratitude. "First and foremost, I'd like to thank Detective Tim Cromie of the Dickinson Police Department and Special Agent Richard of the Federal Bureau of Investigation for their tireless efforts and unwavering dedication over the past year and a half. Their commitment to my case from day one never wavered." Jennifer's statement highlighted the significance of Detective Cromie's promise to seek justice and his unwavering faith in her determination. As Jennifer prepared for the trial, Dennis Earl Bradford took his own life in his cell on the day the trial was scheduled to begin, thus avoiding the consequences of his heinous crimes. Jennifer's courageous journey, spanning nearly 2 decades, finally achieved closure, though not through the trial she had anticipated. Seeking closure, Jennifer visited Dennis Earl Bradford's grave, reading her victim impact statement aloud, wondering if he might hear her from beyond. In a poignant moment, she was bitten by a fire ant, eerily reminiscent of the ants that had tormented her in the field 19 years prior. To Jennifer, this was a sign, a symbol of resolve and resilience. Reflecting on her journey, she noted, "Throughout this ordeal, I've pursued 2 vital objectives. First, to identify and bring to justice the man who kidnapped, assaulted, and attempted to murder me, ensuring he couldn't harm others. And second, to share my story with as many people as possible, inspiring fellow victims of violent crime to stand up and speak out." With pride and conviction, Jennifer declared, "Today I've achieved both goals. My case serves as a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of seeking justice, no matter how long or difficult the journey may be. To all victims of violent crime, I urge you, never lose hope. Find your voice, speak out, and know that with determination, you're capable of overcoming anything." Despite carrying lasting scars, Jennifer refused to let her traumatic experience define her. She chose to reclaim her life, embracing hope and resilience. Jennifer even pursued building a family, despite medical warnings that her assault-related injuries made conception highly unlikely. However, sharing her story brought unexpected hope. A doctor stepped forward, offering assistance, and Jennifer's dreams of motherhood became a reality. She married, and 2 years later, welcomed her first daughter, followed by a son. Today, Jennifer continues to amplify her voice as a passionate victim advocate, shattering the silence imposed upon her. Her courageous journey serves as testament to her unbreakable spirit. Even as a child, Jennifer demonstrated remarkable strength, outlasting the darkness that sought to claim her. Her story now inspires others to find their voices, rise above trauma, and reclaim their lives.